Cowboys-Eagles. Here's a look at some of the biggest moves that each team made. The Cowboys had a very quiet free agency, but they traded for George Pickens and then added guard Tyler Booker in the draft, pass rusher Donovan Ezeraku, corner Siobhan Rebel, and Eagles, they saw a bunch of key defensive players like Milton Williams and Josh Sweat leave in free agency. They did add linebacker Jahad Campbell and safety Andrew Makuba in the draft, and they brought in Adoree Jackson and Azeez Ojulari in free agency. We wondered how the Eagles specifically would fill a lot of voids. Well, the Cowboys too. But Mina, let's start with the Eagles adding youth on the defense as they lost 4 starters from that group that won the Super Bowl. And then when you see the ads for the Cowboys offense, how will it change what they're doing when these teams face off to open the season?
Yeah, I think that the Cowboys offense closed the gap on that side of the ball. We can talk about the other side of the ball where I'm a little bit more apprehensive of how they match up with Philadelphia. But I think offensively, this Cowboys offense really improved, and I think they're going to be able to field a more balanced attack. You know, when they drafted Tyler Booker, 12th overall, I had mixed feelings. Part of me loved the pick because this is a team that has drafted really well on the offensive line. It's been a focus of them, philosophy. They have a young group that got to play together last year, so there's continuity, which Damien knows the importance of. But I also felt like, dang, like really? No wide receivers for Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb getting double teamed. Then you go out and bring George Pickens, and suddenly it feels like the plan came together. Because of those receivers, they're going to face lighter boxes. They're going to be able to run the football better, I think, than they did last year. And it's going to be a handful for this Eagles defense, as good as they were last season.
Yeah, Mina, you touched upon it. I think the real key for the Dallas Cowboys is how well their offensive line comes together. This is a young unit. They've invested a lot of draft capital into this offensive line, and so we saw them struggle last year. But I think as, you know, with continuity, those guys start to trust each other and start playing better. And I think for this whole thing to come together for the Dallas Cowboys on offense, the offensive line and that rushing attack is going to be the key, because last year the Dallas Cowboys were 27th in rushing. I think that's too, you know, you don't want to be too top-heavy going, especially going up against a team like the Philadelphia Eagles. So if this offensive line comes together, boy, they have something cooking in Dallas.
And remember, the biggest upgrade the Cowboys will make on offense is the return to health of their starting quarterback, Dak Prescott, who missed the second half of last season with an injury. When he's been healthy, they have generally been a good team. 6 seasons in the NFL that he has finished fully healthy. They've won the division in 4 of them. So they believe that that'll be a big help regardless of what else they did. But yes, Brian Schottenheimer, now the head coach, overseeing the offense. His mandate is to get that run game functioning better. They think the draft pick of Tyler Booker will help. They've added a couple pieces at the running back position in free agency, but they could still poke around. There are potential trades out there, so they'll keep their eyes open for that. But yes, the George Pickens addition gives them the number 2 wide receiver they were looking for since the start of the offseason. Mina, I believe if Teteroa McMillan had still been there at 12, he's probably their pick. But since he wasn't, they went with the guy in Tyler Booker, who they had ranked as their top offensive lineman in the entire draft.
Yeah, a reminder that Dak Prescott missed both of the games against the Eagles last season, so certainly this Cowboys team looks a lot different with him at the helm. Mina, when you look at the Eagles offense, the biggest change, new offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo, who they promoted from within. Now, the last time they did that, of course, it didn't go well. This, by the way, Jalen Hurts' 12th play caller in 10 years. What's key for the Eagles to be more successful this time around?
Yeah, well, you know, on one hand, calling plays for this Eagles offense is not exactly rocket science. You got a top 3 or better offensive line, top 3 running back, top 3 wide receiver duo. You got an extremely good quarterback in Jalen Hurts, Super Bowl MVP. It's not exactly reinventing the wheel. But as you alluded to, Laura, the last time they had that change in terms of an offensive coordinator leaving, for a head coaching opportunity, it didn't go well with their Brian Johnson, who was offensive coordinator after Shane Steichen. It felt like he kind of hit copy-paste and didn't really develop or evolve the offense the way we saw last year with Kellen Moore, some tweaks, giving Jalen Hurts more answers versus the blitz, some of the evolution of the run game. So I think for Kevin Patullo, it really comes down to you don't have to make wholesale changes, but you do have to continue growing and game plan specific changes, integrating new personnel here and there. And I think those little tweaks, particularly in season, are going to be key to whether or not the Eagles can get back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, listen, this is the biggest thing I'm watching for with the Philadelphia Eagles. Listen, I don't expect wholesale changes offensively because, when you have the personnel that the Philadelphia Eagles have, there's no reason to do that. But every offensive coordinator have their own, way of calling plays. And so that bears watching. And I think the biggest thing when you talk about a new offensive coordinator is how well they adjust in game. I think that's the biggest thing that we're going to see, how well, from series to series, half to half, how well, new offensive coordinator will be able to adjust. I think that's going to go a long way to kind of ease and maybe some concerns going into the season on that side of the ball.
Again, Thursday, September 4th, it kicks off the 2025 NFL season between the Cowboys and Eagles. By the way, ESPN Bet has the line out for week 1. Eagles, early 7-point favorites. They are the defending Super Bowl champs. News out of Cincinnati to get to you guys. Trey Hendrickson made this statement today to ESPN, quote, "No communication has taken place between my camp and the organization post-draft. The offers prior to the draft did not reflect the vision we shared and were promised last offseason if I continue to play at a high level. Coaches are aware of these past conversations. Rather than using collaboration to get us to a point to bring me home to the team, they are no longer communicating. I have been eagerly awaiting a resolution of this situation, but that's hard to do when there's no discussion and an evident lack of interest in reaching mutual goals." The Bengals, of course, need Hendrickson on the field. In the last 3 seasons, Hendrickson has 39% of the Bengals' sacks. That's the highest of any pass rusher in the NFL, 4 percentage points higher than the next closest player, who happens to be Myles Garrett at 35%.
Obviously, he's frustrated that the Bengals haven't offered him what he feels he deserves, and he's frustrated at the pace of the negotiations. Now, we have heard from Bengals front office people earlier this offseason. They feel that they've made fair offers to Trey Hendrickson and that he should be happy with them, but he's obviously not. Look, he says no communication since the draft. The draft was 2 weeks ago, so that's not necessarily like a massive gulf of time, and certainly no deadlines have been missed. But when the Bengals have had issues getting veterans signed to extensions in the past, the issue has been future year guarantees. They have traditionally not guaranteed any money beyond the first year of the contract in these veteran deals. They made exceptions for Joe Burrow and most recently Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So if you're Trey Hendrickson, you just led the league in sacks, you're probably thinking, well, why not me too? If there's an answer, it's that those 3 guys were 26 years old at the times they signed their deals. Trey Hendrickson is 30. That's a significant difference to an NFL team in terms of age, and it's entirely possible that the Bengals would be more hesitant to guarantee money further out in the deal than they were with the younger stars on their roster.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, even if you look at the production and say, well, certainly that doesn't matter as it relates to the age, because the production is just about as good as it could be, but still a very interesting perspective into how different organizations do things. Damien, what do you think of the public negotiations by Hendrickson? Because maybe this was avoidable, but now it's all out there, right?
The Bengals are doing so well. They were doing so well. They signing both of the wide receivers, and it seems like the Bengals have gone back bangling again with Trey Hendrickson. I mean, you're talking about a guy over the last 2 seasons has 35 sacks. Like, literally, this is one of the best defensive players that we have in our game. And we saw how bad this Bengals defense was. You bring in, replace Lou Anarumo, and you bring in Al Golden as the new defense coordinator. You don't think Al Golden wants or needs Trey Hendrickson back on that defense to get to revitalize that defense? So it's just unfortunate that it's gotten to this point, because honestly, you need him on that defense to bring some type of juice off the edge.
Yeah, I mean, D. Wood, I agree. I think, Mina, you're going to agree too. But they did draft Shamar Stewart in the first round. Bit of a wild card in some ways. But is Hendrickson still indispensable for this defense?
Yes, no doubt. In part because of the type of player who Stewart is. He was an unbelievable athlete. I think he got like a 10 out of 10 in relative athletic score at the combine. He plays really hard, but he had historically low sack reduction for a first-round edge rusher. The hope with him is you're taking a big swing, and over time he can develop and his pass rush moves and his plan and hit that ceiling that the Bengals likely believe is so high. That plan doesn't work if there's not a proven pass rusher across from him, in my opinion. I like the pick if he gets to play opposite Trey Hendrickson and work on his game and maybe even learn from Hendrickson. I don't like it if you're expecting Stewart to come in and get sacks right away after he didn't get them at the college level. So I'm apprehensive about all of this, and I do think those players, that pick works best if Hendrickson is on the field.
To some more top stories. We got Dan Graziano here for that. Graz, what's going on with James Cook?
Not much, Laura. The Bills have given out a lot of contract extensions this offseason, but running back James Cook, coming off consecutive 1,000-yard seasons and having led the league in rushing touchdowns this past year, still does not have one. 1 year left on his deal at about $5.3 million. He has been public about his desire for a new contract. This is a Bills front office that has not historically liked to pay running backs big money. He has not been attending off-season workouts, but nothing mandatory has been missed yet. Steelers last week, as we know, traded away George Pickens to the Cowboys, leaving them with this crew at wide receiver for this year. They're high on Calvin Austin, a couple of their younger guys. Don't be surprised to see the Steelers poke around at potential trades or other outside acquisitions at wide receiver. A place like a Green Bay, where there might be a surplus of available receivers, might be one to watch there as the offseason moves along. And then, Laura, the big news from this weekend was the announcement of Derek Carr's retirement. Derek Carr, Saints quarterback, who's been dealing with a shoulder injury that would require surgery if he wanted to keep playing, announced on Saturday that instead he is going to retire from the NFL after 11 seasons. He had $30 million in guaranteed salary coming his way this year, but has decided that is not worth it in terms of continuing his career and fighting through another shoulder surgery and recovery from that. So Derek Carr hanging it up after 11 years in the NFL.